It's time for Don't Mess This Up, presented by Snickers. We have three big questions for Week 16, as we normally do this time on the show, to help you maybe not mess up some of your lineup decisions in a week that is incredibly critical for everybody. It is, win or go home, to steal a line from TNT in their NBA coverage. Let's start, though, with Kyler Murray, who last week seemed to be in the ultimate smash spot against the Detroit Lions. Instead, the Cardinals got smashed. The Lions get maybe the most surprising win of the season. The Cardinals now see their lead pretty much gone in the NFC West after the Rams beat the Seahawks on Tuesday night. But for fantasy, Kyler really let us down in a spot where you thought 20 points seemed to be inevitable. He got you, 12, 13 points? It was not a very good showing for him. How worried are we about this going forward, considering he's got a really tough defense in the Colts to face this week?
I'm not too worried about Kyler Murray. I know the last two games haven't been his best, but the one before that, he went off in week 13. The thing is, the Colts are a pretty tough defense, but their struggles come against the pass. So I'm still trusting Kyler Murray. I have him ranked as my QB 6 this week, which is a little lower than normal, but I still think very high. Like, you don't have one of the 5 quarterbacks ahead of him likely if you have Kyler. So I think you continue to ride out with him. But yeah, you got to be a little bit more concerned because last week was such a smash spot. No D-Hop. The offense struggled, but I think I think at least Kyler Murray gets right against the Colts in this matchup.
I think so as well. I'd like to chalk this up as it just being a really bad game for whatever reason. No one saw it coming, but hopefully this is just, it's a speed bump sort of thing that, if nothing else, he can get out of the pocket. He can run some. He can make some plays with his legs. I think he still has plenty of targets to throw the football to. I think Zach Ertz has a great matchup. The Colts have been awful against tight ends. So even if he's not necessarily lighting up his wide receivers with opportunities, maybe the tight end gets some. Maybe you just throw some balls out of the backfield, whether it's James Conner or Chase Edmonds. But I'd like to think this is a bounce back week, in part because the Cardinals need this too. They need to right the ship. They're still very much in play for the NFC West title, but they got to win some football games. And part of that means Kyler Murray going out and being successful on the field for that to happen. Another quarterback that we got concerns about, Dak Prescott, who has really struggled. I know he had, was banged up midway through the season. Since then, just has never seemed to completely get right. And this week has a great matchup. You couldn't really ask for a better matchup than he's got against the Washington football team. They've given up the most points to quarterbacks all season long, but Dak has been driving the struggle bus lately. Do we consider putting him on the bench this week?
I think you consider it, but it all depends on what your options are. Because, look, I get it. Dak has been struggling mightily. He hasn't topped 12 fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games. He played the same Washington defense when they brought their bench. That's the whole new thing in the NFC East. They're all bringing their benches to opposing stadiums. But he gave you less than 10 fantasy points in that one. But because of, one, the quarterback position has not been as strong this year as it has normally. I still have Dak as my QB 9, just ahead of Burrow, Wilson, Hill, Fields. So I'm thinking you still likely have to start Dak Prescott, but I would definitely be worried about it.
I don't think it's an automatic. When you drafted Dak, the idea was he was going to be set it and forget it, that you put him in your lineup and you left him there outside of a bye or possibly injury. But now here we are in week 16 in a situation where you got to have a win, and we're talking about maybe putting him on the bench. And it really does depend on who else you have. I think you're very much looking at the matchups, but also keep in mind, do you have somebody that has the ceiling of Dak Prescott? Do you have somebody that has the weapons around him? You're not going to find too many teams that have a trio of receivers like Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. And so that's something to keep in mind. But where once it seemed like a slam dunk, where, if we had asked this question in September, people would have laughed at us and probably unsubscribed to the show. But now here we are in December, and we're having this conversation. We are having it for real because the idea of just automatically blindly starting your studs has gone out the window, because we've got, 14, 15 games of data to kind of lean back on. And at least the recent data for Dak Prescott has not been particularly great. Mentioned at the top of the show, the injuries in Tampa Bay. One of them is to Leonard Fournette, suffered a knee injury in the loss to the Saints on Sunday night. So that is going to keep him out at least for the next few weeks. So that pushes Ronald Jones to the front of the line. We know Keyshawn Vaughn is still there. By the way, the Buccaneers signed Le'Veon Bell, which really feels like a break glass in case of emergency sort of situation for Bruce Arians. I don't think that's going to really move the needle for fantasy types, but, it's fun to talk about it. Look, Le'Veon Bell is back in Tampa Bay. ISO Joe Johnson is back in the NBA. Like, we're just bringing all the flashbacks back right now across professional sports. But Ronald Jones, going to get plenty of opportunity as the lead running back in Tampa. But, what are your expectations for him? Do we like the matchup? How are we feeling about him this week?
Yeah, the Panthers are a little bit of a tough matchup against the run, but it's not enough to scare me off of Ronald Jones. Like, he is in my top 20 running back. So I think if you get him off the waiver wire, you start him either as your RB2 or your flex. And I might even be bumping him up a little bit, Marcus. Right now at 18, ahead of him is Antonio Gibson, who got banged up last night, Zeke Elliott, who I've been pretty low on, and then the Broncos running backs and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So, like, I'm going to be bumping up Ronald Jones a little bit now, but I haven't decided just how far yet, but that means he is firmly inside my top 20 running backs. So I think if you pick him up off the waiver wire, you just start him this week.
Let me correct myself real quick. I said a knee injury for Leonard Fournette. It's a hamstring injury that has him out right now. So either way, the result is the same. Yeah, I still think, I think Ronald Jones is worthy of at least a flex opportunity, depending on who else you have on your roster, just because we do like the volume, and it is a banged up offense. Jones has a lot of burst. He's a guy who can, rip off chunks of yardage, even if he doesn't get involved in the passing game. I mean, that's part of what made Fournette so productive this year, is that he was catching the football from Tom Brady. I don't think you can expect quite that from Ronald Jones, but I do think he is certainly worth getting some run. I mean, look, as I mentioned, someone out there on the internet, and I'm sure more than one someone, is talking about starting Ronald Jones over Saquon Barkley because we like the offense, we like the opportunity, and right now he seems to have a higher ceiling and maybe even a safer floor than Saquon Barkley does right now. So if you got him,
I'd play him over Saquon.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't. Here it is. Like we're saying this, and for you, it wasn't even a debate. It was, we're still starting Ronald Jones. So if you got him, I think you're plugging him in the lineup this week against the Carolina Panthers.